First on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger 10. Here's Steve Deace.
And welcome to this week's episode of Bigger 10. I'm Steve Deace alongside my co-host, Aaron McIntire. Good to see you, brother. As the world turns here, like sands through the hourglass, this is the Big 10 of our lives. The soap opera goes on and on, brother.
I know. Soap opera, actually, now that you say that, that is probably the most appropriate simile I've heard about this saga.
I mean, the picture that is most often used of our commissioner, Kevin Warren, doesn't it look like the close-up shot they always give you at the end of a scene of a soap opera? As like pondering the last line of dialogue.
Yep.
Isn't that like the look on Kevin Warren's face? Mm-hmm. I mean, this entire thing has been a soap opera. It shows no signs of slowing down. So let us begin our Big Five this week on Bigger 10. When will the Big 10 return? Who the hell knows? All right. I will tell you this, okay? It's going to be it's going to be January at the absolute latest. January is the latest the Big 10 will return, but you just flashed it up there. Go ahead, put it back there. This is a tweet yesterday from Teddy Greenstein at the Chicago Tribune. Just spoke to one coach who said, we're trying to play as soon as possible. Let's go. Dan Patrick had the scoop on his program this week that the Big 10 is eyeing a return on October the 10th. Now, the president at the University of Nebraska says there's nothing to that rumor, but I'm reminded of how we got to our cancellation, remember, Aaron, is Dan Patrick came out and said, hey, my sources are telling me the league is done. It's not going to play. The vote is 12-2. There was official denial from within the league later that day, right? And then 2 days later, the league canceled, and now we just learned the vote was maybe, if they had it, who knows, 11-3. So what do you think? What are your instincts telling you? I've got a theory as to what's happening, but I'll let you go first.
Well, this is kind of going, I don't want to say it's going exactly the way I thought, but when we did
poop
that show.
You thought it was going to be a poop show?
Okay. The year 2020 has been a poop show so far.
Yes.
In the public policy or just the public realm anyway. But anyway, I told you when we had left recording, I believe it was for Michigan podcast, but the day that they announced originally that, we're going to delay the season, I told you, I don't think this is over yet. And here we are about a month later, and I don't think it's over yet. In fact, it's a lot closer, obviously, than it was a day ago, a week ago, and especially a month ago, to actually playing football, and not just football on Thanksgiving, football sooner, when you can actually have a team that maybe competes for a national title, a bunch of players who can compete for individual honors and awards. And so that's a very good development, and I don't want to be melodramatic here because it seems like this entire saga, as you just pointed out, has been melodrama. It's been a soap opera. I don't want to be melodramatic here, but putting myself in a young man's shoes, and I say young man, he's probably like a foot taller than me, but Justin Fields, maybe sitting at his apartment in Columbus or whatever house he's sharing in Columbus on Saturday night, kicking his feet up, and watching Austin Peay versus Central Arkansas. Those guys can play, but I can't.
I know.
And this entire saga. Hey, guess what, Steve? I just want to remind you something. They're still practicing. Still practicing.
Yes.
And they've been practicing this entire time.
We're talking about practice.
And
all we talk about is practice, is what the players are saying right now.
Just put yourself, these guys, they have world-class healthcare. They have an education many of them that's paid for, and they have nutrition, especially in the Big Ten, that's just out of this world good. So, they have a lot of things going for them, but they came to these teams primarily to play football. And when you're just continue to be yanked around and quite frankly lied to and peed on and being told that it's raining. Man, I do, all those advantages that they have that the typical college student does not have, all of those being stated, I do feel for a lot of these players right now.
Well said. My theory as to what's happening here is I believe that the players and ADs and Kevin Warren, the commissioner, are united here in trying to publicly pressure the presidents to letting them start the season in October. That's what I believe is going on. I think that's where the pro start media links are coming from. Leaks, I should say. I think that's what's happening. I think the players, or the coaches, the AD, and now I think they've got Kevin Warren on their side, have just decided enough of this. Enough. We're killing our league. We need to play football. I think that's what's happening. I think that's the difference between what guys who have very good sources, like Dan Patrick and Teddy Greenstein, were saying yesterday compared to the Nebraska school president. Speaking of Nebraska, that brings us to the second item we want to get to. An absolutely incredulous, except it's the year 2020, so it's not, an absolutely incredulous admission in any other year by the Big Ten Conference in Lancaster County Court in Nebraska last week. Big Ten attorney, according to Sean Callahan, Andrew Luger, argues that, quote, the harm would be incredible, unquote, if the board of directors documents from the Big Ten were made available to the public. Do you know what that means, Aaron? What it means is the Big Ten is saying transparency. Now, all but Northwestern are 13 of these schools are public institutions. So all of this is subject to FOIA anyway, okay? Any text, any letter, any note, anything. But the Big Ten went into court in Lancaster County, Nebraska last week and openly said transparency would be very harmful to the league. If you all got to see why we made this decision and how it would really, you think it's bad now. You think it's bad now. You think this league is getting sodomized in the PR sector now. All right, you're going to run a train on us if you actually see how we came to this conclusion. I cannot believe that they put that in a court filing, except it's 2020, so I should.
That's the only conclusion. Because here's something where you're if you are actually united when you're the Big Ten and the presidents, here's what you do. You have your talking points down. You have the next 2 or 3 steps of political chess mapped out and ready to go. That is panic.
Yes,
that is absolute sheer panic.
Yep.
They could have said something diplomatic like, we really regret, our hearts go out to the players and the families. We want to play. Everybody wants to play, but the public health, yada, 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 BS, that stuff that I believe is BS. But that's what they could have said. And instead they were like, no, no comprendo. No, do not collect $200. Do not pass go. We cannot absolutely not reveal this. And to use incredible damage, really, either that's an overstatement or what in the world are they hiding? And I don't know of course we want to know, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if what we get out of this, if anything, is going to be comforting at any level. Because I don't think it's going to be a bunch of people, wringing their hands. I think it's going to be a whole lot of stupid.
I think if we get that level of transparency, we're going to be shocked to find out how little thought went into this.
Yeah.
How little of a deep dive on the data went into this, and how much of this was just like, hey, are you comfortable taking this risk? Nope. All right, then shut it down.
It's Andy Dwyer from Parks and Rec. I cannot stress how little I have thought about this decision.
All right, next up as we go through our rundown here this week on Bigger Ten. Now, what we just discussed, Aaron, those are some bad optics, right? Having the attorney for the granddaddy of all conferences go into a court of law and saying, listen, telling our student athletes the truth of how we do our business around here would be do incredible damage to the league, right? All right, those are some bad optics, right?
Yeah.
These might be the worst optics ever. All right. Michigan's Aiden Hutchinson says it bothers him that Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren's son is playing this season. Says it's unfair that his family got to talk about it and make the decision, but Hutchinson's family didn't. This is one of, I can't, this is just such, this isn't low-lying fruit, dude. This is the fruit ripened on its own, saw you come by and that you were hungry, jumped off the tree and landed in your mouth. All right. This isn't even this requires no mental capacity at all to say, so wait, your kid can play, but the other kids can. And in the other conference, you were fine letting your kid make that decision, but you won't let the kids in your it doesn't take an IQ above 14 to make this argument.
I know that the commissioners of any conferences really don't have a lot of direct contact with players. But again, I ask you, if you're in Kevin Warren's shoes, and I think this lends to what you said earlier during the first topic, that there is kind of a united front amongst some of the ADs along with Kevin Warren. If you're Kevin Warren, because of what this tweet just said, and the terrible optic that is, how would you ever be able to look one of these athletes in the eye again after screwing them over like this? And again, I know that the commissioners don't have a lot of direct contact, but still, my goodness. So I do think that kind of lends credence to the notion that Kevin Warren is like, okay, I'm going to do what I can to actually convince and put the pressure on these presidents, which is where it should be.
Now, one of the things the Pac-12 said, well, really the only thing the Pac-12 says was the reason it wasn't going to play. And one of the things the Big Ten cited as well was a concern about the availability of testing and the cost. So when the Big Ten signed off, it was about $150 per test per player. And so if you want to do 2 or 3 of those a week, and there's 85 scholarship players on a team, that is a lot of money, right? Well, lo and behold, we've had now our 3rd innovation on cheaper, more available testing. Now, this one is from Abbott Labs. It's a self-contained saliva test. It just received emergency authorization from the FDA. It's $5 a test. 5. But get this, Aaron. This is actually the 3rd testing innovation that has taken place since the Big Ten signed off. Another one from the NBA Players Association and Yale University that cost only $4 a sample to process. And then a place called the University of Illinois. What conference would they be in? Do you know?
Probably MAC or something.
Are they in this one maybe? Yes, they have their own saliva-based test that has received FDA approval too. So in the I'll take worst timing ever for $800, Alex. After citing a lack of inexpensive and affordable mass testing capabilities, since the league shut it down 3 weeks ago, we have had not 1, not 2, but 3. Tice, he times a coronavirus test, Buckwheat. 3 of them, Aaron. 3 of them have happened in just the last 3 weeks.
I'm trying to look for the exact number here because, the NBA has been using these tests, I believe, inside their bubble as well. The last story that I can find, this is from August 19th. NBA announces 0 players tested positive for COVID-19 inside Disney bubble for 5th straight week. Now, I'd have to confirm whether or not they're actually using the nasal swabs or the rapid tests that we just mentioned here as well. I assume that they're using the rapid test because that's what that implies. Couple that news. Does that shock you, Steve? 0 tests for 5 straight weeks inside of a bubble?
No, the NFL just finished training camps. 2,560 players. They have 1 player on the COVID reserved list right now out of 2,560 players. And they've been hit. They're hitting each other. They're in full padded camp for the last 3 weeks in the NFL.
So here's my thought as well, and maybe this is for a different show. Here's my thought as well. These nasal swabs, what are they called? The PCR
tests. Yeah.
We had the New York Times story about how those may be amplified artificially. The results, the positive results, artificially amplified by as much as 90%.
Well, remember, the NFL had 77 false tests last weekend. Remember that.
And you take that as well.
Yep.
And then you look at these different types of tests that are not PCR-based, as I'm aware, because that can't be PCR-based, because PCR is something done in a lab.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that makes things that make you go,
Indeed. Other things that make you go, Remember when, what's the Clay Travis name? He gives these folks the Corona Bros, right? Mm-hmm. Remember when the Corona Bros all over your Twitter feeds were incensed at the end of July into early August? How dare you folks think we're trying to cancel college football, that we don't want the sport to play? It's how we get paid. We love the sport, right? We saw all Pete Thamel and all these Corona Bros, Dan Wolken, who is like the worst sports writer probably in this solar system, right? Mm-hmm. Funny thing happened though on the way to lecturing us. I mean, dude, I don't care if you're going to vote for Donald Trump or Mickey Mouse on November 3rd. I don't give a flat rip if the president's name is Cucky McCuckface. But if he wants to use the power of the White House to give us our Big Ten football, I ain't looking a cuck face in the mouth. Are you?
No.
I'm not looking a gift cuck in the mouth. I'm taking it and run with it, right? But lo and behold, the same people who didn't want us to point out that it sure seemed like they really were trying to get college football canceled just were incensed that the President of the United States injected himself into the Big Ten debate and called Kevin Warren yesterday, proving that yet again, self-awareness is dead. And props to more and more sports writers, regardless of their politics. It doesn't matter. Just do your job, man. Just be a professional at your job. And by the way, part of your job is to actually leave your politics out of it and just cover the sport, right? So I don't know what Tim Brando and Aaron Torres at Fox Sports and some of these guys, I don't know what their politics are. I mean, Clay Travis is pretty open about his are, but I don't know what the rest of these guys' politics are. And props to them for calling out these Corona Bro frauds in college sports media who, they tried to keep sports shut down this year. And they failed. College football was their last bastion. They failed at that. And now the Big Ten, we seem to be the last refuge for these scoundrels. The last place for them to plant their flag and say that they claim some kind of COVID casualty this year. Shame on every last one of them.
Shame is something actually that we need a little bit more of. I believe, at least amongst the sports writing world, and I would just add this to wrap up the first segment here today. Late last week, Joe Biden released an ad that ran in Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, featuring vistas of empty Michigan Stadium, empty Camp Randall, empty Beaver Stadium, with the words, "It didn't have to be this way." Were those same sports writers incensed that this was getting political back then? No, of course not. Get that out of here. This is, guys, let me reset this again as well. What is wrong with somebody efforting to save the economic activity ranging in the billions of dollars and potentially at least salvaging some mental health aspects for thousands of people involved with the season as well? I didn't hear anything about the politicization of this back when Joe Biden released that ad, which was all over YouTube last weekend. And but I'm hearing about it now that somebody's actually stepping in trying to save the season. They can all go do something as far as I'm concerned.
I like Mark Packer on Sirius XM, but I listened to him all day yesterday act incredulous. With all the things we got going on in this country, the president is calling about Big Ten football. Hey, Mark, every school is talking about losing $100 million. Multiply that by 14. You know what you get? $1.4 billion, Mark. $1.4 billion. That's just the lost revenue from the schools, Mark. That's not talking about all of the ancillary businesses, the clothers, the restaurateurs, the sports bars, everything else that gets associated with college sports. So you're damn right. In one of the most populous regions of the country, you're damn right we could use the help saving $1.4 billion in lost revenue before we even get to what it does to the private sector. And I'll tell you what, man, Joe Biden, dude, if you want to go all in helping us get Big Ten football back, brother, I can't speak for Aaron. You'll get nothing but hosannas from me. I'll take assistance from just about any place right now other than Iran. Okay, I mean, this is the thing. Isn't this supposed to bring us together? Don't we all set aside our differences to come and root for our teams and enjoy our sports?
Not anymore.
Apparently not anymore. We'll come back with our weekly game of Would You Rather next.
Bigger 10 is brought to you by Michigan Podcast. If you like what you're hearing today and would like to support us, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast, where if you live somewhere where sports wagering is illegal, you can find Steve's picks for various games for just $5 a month. In the process, you can say thank you for creating this podcast on YouTube or via podcast, wherever you listen. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast.
Let's play our weekly game of Bigger 10, Would You Rather? And Aaron, this first one, brother, it is for you. Would you rather risk your life playing in the Big 12, the SEC, or ACC? In other words, which conference would you most trust your life? Would you most trust with your life as a player this fall? Because, that's what they're all doing, is risking their lives. So which conference are you most confident in trusting your life to?
See, I've set up on purpose several false choices for you in Would You Rather over the last few months, and you've done a good job of just taking them at face value instead of blowing them up like I was hoping you would do. This one's a false choice. I mean, I guess maybe the Big 12. If you're asking me who I'm going to be the biggest fan for, that's the Big 12, I guess, just because I'm probably going to be in Iowa State for a little while. So probably the Big 12, at least for now, anyway.
Oh, they got some good med schools in the ACC, like Duke, Wake Forest, right?
Oh, those are podunk crap.
But this is where you go off the board, dude. Dude, I'm going AAC.
See, I was thinking about that as well.
They got the Naval Academy there. Who's got better doctors than that? By the way, that cracks me up. All right. What institutions of higher learning have more invested in their student athletes than Army and Navy do? Think about that.
Very few.
The next Nimitz, the next MacArthur, the next Eisenhower, Schwarzkopf, sitting on those campuses right now, right? Mm-hmm. Sitting on those campuses right now. They've got decades invested in each of these student athletes. And Navy and Army are going out there and playing a full schedule. The idea that Purdue or Michigan, because our school president apparently is the chief Karen of the bunch now. The idea that Michigan cares more about its student athletes than West Point and Annapolis do. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Really? Anyway, enough. Aaron, your turn.
This one's for you. Would you rather have the novelty of Big Ten football in the spring by itself or start playing as soon as possible?
Oh, I would rather start playing as soon as possible. I will tell you what I think the worst of both worlds is starting in Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Because you've now screwed your teams out of going for the playoff, your players out of vying for individual awards. If you're not going to play in October or even early November and try to go like 8 or 9 weeks in a row or something, then if you're not going to do that, then you might as well just wait till January and kind of make it a novelty and own that time period. But starting games Thanksgiving weekend while everyone else is at the pinnacles of their seasons, it just kind of screams, our buddy Mark Rogers said this on Michigan Podcast yesterday. Doesn't it just kind of just scream, hey, we're the B team here, right? We're the opening act, I'm going to hard pass. All right, this one is for you on our weekly game of Would You Rather. Would you rather bet win totals? Now, this one is just a straight up serious question, right? Would you rather bet win totals in a season rife with potential game cancellations or bet on games in a season rife with late-breaking virus news? Like the first game, Austin Peay had 2 of its best players have to hold out because of contact tracing on COVID-19. So which of those 2 do you think is the shakier bet? Game cancellations with season win totals or making game bets with COVID updates? So
I would rather actually do the win totals. And here's why. Because over the course of an entire season, under the assumption that things cut both ways and kind of law of averages makes things a wash, I think that's easier to factor into your handicapping than actually an individual game where it could only affect one side of the equation very, very, very swiftly and very demonstrably. So overall, just law of it's not going to be great on either, but overall, I think season win totals are still where I'm at. What about you? Actually,
I first of all, I'm just really good at season win totals, so I'm going to probably take my chances there because that's kind of my speciality, Obi-Wan. But if I didn't have that speciality, at least with late breaking COVID news, if I blow the pre-game bet, there's in-game wagering where maybe I can try to make some of that back.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I hear you. All right.
This last one's for you. At this very moment, would you rather be PJ Fleck or Scott Frost?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say Scott Frost.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because I have an administration that I know that actually wants to play college football. I don't believe Minnesota wants to play football. You notice they were conspicuously absent when we were doing the hashtag Let Them Play rally a few weeks ago. PJ Fleck is not shy by any stretch. He was MIA during that. So you don't think it's because PJ Fleck doesn't want to play football, right? So what does that tell you? It tells you that he knows his administration didn't want to play. And he didn't want to publicly go against his administration. So, how does Minnesota have last year's first 11-win campaign since 1905 not be a flash in the pan? Well, you got to have everybody, pardon the expression, rowing the boat in the same direction here, right? Everybody's in on the importance of football, and I just don't think it is for the administration at Minnesota. Where at Nebraska, it's the ride or die, right? So I can be a great football coach, man, but if I don't have the support of the administration, I think of Rich Rodriguez at Michigan. Everybody thought he was a great coach before he got here, right? Didn't have the support of the administration. Look what happened. And I think if I'm PJ Fleck, I would have advised him before to stay at Minnesota and build that culture because it gives it more integrity, that it's not just a gimmick, but he really believes in it. But if I were advising him now, I might say, dude, are you sure your administration is all in on this sport as you are? Because they didn't show it when it was needed the most. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Big Ten Would You Rather. We'll come back with our Twitter poll results and our question of the week next. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you if there was a no confidence vote on Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren, how would you vote? This one went down to the wire, Aaron. 93.7% of our audience on Twitter said no confidence. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that was just a nail biter. And, it's really easy.
Provisional ballots, galore.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And it's really easy. I mean, it's just, it's easy to see why it was such a nail biter. I just think the attitudes of most of Big Ten country are just like, well, I'm not really sure if we want college football this year after all. And so I think it was basically, going on to Twitter and just basically doing one of these things, covering up your eyes and just, seeing what sticks. And, we had to sweat it out till the very end, but no came through.
How about Stanford coach David Shaw, by the way, saying his players are elated that they didn't have to play?
What? Come on.
Yeah.
No.
Straight up.
That's a total dude code violation.
Straight up.
You're never elated. You're never.
I don't know that he used the word elated, but that is what he described. I'm giving you the summary.
If you're ever elated about the absence of football, even if it's a quote unquote good excuse like a pandemic, if you're ever elated with any, even when, did you play football in high school?
Yeah.
No, you could not act like you were happy that football practice was over every day. You could not act
if we were on the Titanic.
That was a total dude code violation. You never walk away from the football field acting pleased that there's no football for the rest of the day. Never do that. That's total. It is Stanford though, so.
If you were on the Titanic, they said iceberg straight ahead. Hey man, grab the football. A little 7-on-7 here to close it out.
Exactly.
Right? I hear you. All right. This week's question of the week comes from Josh. I knew I was gonna butcher it. Amater Tabehe, I think is how it's pronounced. Amater Bebe, actually. He is a player at the University of Illinois, and he tweeted this out: "America's not perfect, but it's still the best country in the world." There is no question there. I think just something that needed to be restated and needed to be heard. And doesn't mean that they don't have some legitimate political and cultural gripes, but it is nice to hear every now and then from a player that recognizes, you know what, man, we got some issues here, but when you look at the bigger picture, we got it pretty good. that's why on shows like this, we are very hesitant. And we all have our strong political opinions. I work full-time in politics. But I'm very, very hesitant to pollute this arena with those things, because if we take all the things that bring us together as a people and just remind us that you're just a guy named Aaron, I'm just a guy named Steve, and you're just a person named you, and we have lots of things in common when we're not talking about politics, right? Mm-hmm. If we take those things away and pollute them with politics, then we start removing a lot of the ties that bind us together as a people, and that puts us much more at risk of ruining this good thing we got going called America than anything anybody with any ne'er-do-well visions in other countries may have that they would like to do to us. So thank you, Josh, for that reminder of the bigger picture. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Bigger 10. Follow us all week long on Twitter @Bigger10 to keep up to date on what we think there about the latest breaking developments as this story and soap opera continues to evolve. Until the next time, for Aaron McIntire, I'm Steve Deace. We'll see you next episode on Bigger 10.